On today's episode of Torah and Sports, Rabbi Liff is going to be sharing with us incredible stories on sports. Gedolei Yisrael who played sports, a frum Jew who won a poker tournament and gave all his winnings to tzedakah, the time Rabbi Liff beat an NBA player in a one-on-one basketball game, and so much more. I'm Yisrael Yudkowsky. You are listening to Torah and Sports with Rabbi Liff.
Torah and Sports, episode number 2. And who knows, maybe we'll even have an episode number 3. I don't know. We'll see where this leads towards us. And I was just thinking, number one is, first of all, just to, kind of recap a little bit of some of the thoughts we had last week, the last episode, and some of the guidelines, which I felt were important. And I think that the headlines was Torah governing sports. That's really what it comes down to. If you want to really take the soundbite out of it, how does Torah govern sports, and how do we live in a world where sports is really such a strong attraction, and it's captivating, and it's entertaining, and it's part of kids' lives. And I as a kid, as a child, grew up in the United States of America. And the truth is, even though we're speaking about American sports, but really this discussion is really for sports world over, soccer and cricket and rugby. And whenever I meet people from different places, and you see how much, from people, they have like an attraction to sports, and they like to discuss it, and they're part of it, and they play it. So it's really something that's there. And the question just is, how do we address it, and what's the Torah hashkafa about it? So we'll try this. We'll try to bring in some current events. I just, had a discussion this week with a Talmud of mine who's very sports minded, and he was telling me about how the YU basketball team, the YU Maccabees, has become like an undefeated team, and they're really it's like an unbelievable change. Like, it seems the YU basketball team for many, many years really wasn't considered, in the running of the sports league, and all of a sudden now they become like this, I can't say superpower, but within their conference,
They're being noticed.
They're being noticed, and they have like an unbeaten streak and everything else, and they have all good Jewish players, and it's a pattern.
It's all Jewish players.
I think it's all Jewish players, and they get like the best Jewish players from across the country. And this Talmud was speaking about how really it's become, it's a matter of Jewish pride. Look, we have a great team also, and so on one hand, Jewish pride is a good thing, and on the other hand, is this really something that does the Torah value it? So I think it's an honest discussion we should have, and we want to give a shout out to the YU basketball team. There should be matzliach, and especially if it's done. And that was one of the things that he mentioned, is that one of the aspects of is that you see their, for lack of a better term, their midos on the basketball court. It seems that they're always very, very, even though when you're down in the trenches, you know what I mean? You're pushing and you're trying to, box out and everything else. But it seems they're very, they're kind, they're good in the end of the day. And people notice that, they're not just, they don't, the way their languages, they use language like other people use, like, the way regular non-Jewish players use, or that they use it in a finer, more refined manner. So you see that you can have sports, and you can have also Kiddush Hashem, which is such a great thing. So that's maybe a positive aspect of Torah and sports, which we should point out. And we know the battle of Hanukkah was the battle of Yehuda Maccabi against the Yevanim, and the Yevanim were really all about physical and power and strength, and Yehuda Maccabi was Micha Moicha Be'elam Hashem, who was like you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what Maccabi really stands for. And in the modern day Maccabi, there's a basketball team, Maccabi Tel Aviv, which is very, very famous, and they've won the championships in Europe. And I remember many, many years ago, there was a game where they played They played against a Moscow team, Cheska Moscow, and Israel. Most of the players I can't say were Jewish, but there were some Jewish players and everything else. And they won the championship. It was the first time that Israel won, going back many, many years. And it was like, I think it was maybe during Hanukkah. Maybe it was during Hanukkah. Like that. They said, Nes Gadol Hayasham. We won. It was like beyond, the Russians had like 7 feet guys, you know what I mean? And Maccabi Tel Aviv had, good Jewish players in respect to the Russian players. And somehow they won. And I remember the coach, he put on a yarmulke afterwards, and he was saying, making a bracha. So it's interesting how we relate to this, to the story of Hanukkah. And also happens to be that today, again, everything is min hashamayim. Today is, in America, Thanksgiving, which is a big national holiday in the United States of America. And in sports, there's always a football game and there's a parade. I was speaking to my mother, Shabika Zuttenstart, and she said that, it's a shaila, but, in our home, when we grew up, my mother didn't make a turkey dinner for the Thanksgiving. It was 1 year, I said last week, that my father was a handball champion, and he won the first prize of a championship. The first prize was a turkey, a big, gigantic turkey. So my father took it to the shochet, and the shochet, he shechted it, and then we brought it home. My mother made a turkey dinner. It was like the first time we had a turkey dinner, because we had a turkey, kosher turkey. And I remember, like, we had, literally for the next month, we had turkey soup, and we had turkey cold cuts. The turkey was coming out of our ears and out of our stomach. But my mother said that when she grew up, that her father, my grandfather, Rabbi Liff, used to take it to the parade, and he used to put up a flag by July 4th, and he was a very frum Yid, and he used to say that we have to have a Karsatov, United States of America, and you have to, so. See, this has always been an issue, and I notice a shaila. Some people say that Thanksgiving is mamish chukas hagoyim, and you can't have any shaychas. Rav Moshe Feinstein paskined in the Igros Moshe that no, it's not considered a religious holiday. And it thinks it's Thanksgiving, and it's really like just the foundation of the United States of America and the Pilgrims, and they had Thanksgiving. So Rav Moshe holds that it's a davar rishus, and you're allowed to have a Thanksgiving dinner.
Like, it's not an official Christian holiday.
That's
it's not from the religion.
Right.
It's an American holiday.
Right. And there are other people that say not like that. So, but I can just tell you is that it's definitely part of the culture in America. And there are many, many from people that are going to go out. They're going to have a Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone will ask the local Orthodox rabbi what they should do. Mm-hmm. But we see that, again, this has to do with really the overall picture of it, is that how do we take a look at how we fit in with the world at large.
I think also Thanksgiving is different than other holidays. Is also like, what is the holiday celebrating? You have Christmas, Halloween. It's all of like the Christian stuff and like stuff that we don't believe in. But Thanksgiving is a holiday based on giving thanks. It's called Thanksgiving. So which is a beautiful thing. So it's probably also like another thing where it's not. Why it would be okay to participate in it, rather than other holidays.
Right. So then someone pointed out to me, I just heard this, that there's something called the World Series of Poker. Now, and it seems that there's a frum modern Orthodox Jew who either won the top prize or one of the top prizes. He definitely was in the top tier, and he's a frum Jew. I think his name is Disseldorf. It could be I'm making a mistake. Okay, everyone should check up on it. But he's a frum. I don't think he's a shul goer, and he's very interesting. He won, if I'm not mistaken, $200,000, and he himself takes all of his proceedings and he donates it for charity. From things he gives to NCSY, other causes, and this and that. He's a very interesting person, supposedly.
If he loses in a poker game, does he go to Kupashal Tzedakah to ask for money?
That would be a good shot. Yeah. That would be a good shot.
Last time I won, I gave you the tzedakah, now I lost, so you gotta give it back. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So you have, without getting into poker is a whole different shaila. Is it considered mesachik b'kuvia? Not considered mesachik b'kuvia? Again, I'm not going to get into the halacha over here. But you see, you have a frum Jew today, and he makes a kiddush Hashem of it. Takes the money and he gives it for tzedakah, gives it charity, and that's what that's his thing. It seems he's independently able to make money for his family and everything else, and he does this as a game, and to him it's almost like a sport, so to speak, and he's very very adamant about that. The money goes. So you see, even in such a case, Mizam is not mesachik because he's not really doing it for profit. But I'm not here to go to discuss halachic shal. I'm here more to shal. Again, there's a world out there. There's ESPN. There's the bright lights. There's how we somehow are part of the society, and at the same time, how do we make sure that it doesn't affect and it doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, like also this whole the Torah and sports, like we mentioned last week, and also now we're not talking about if you could, if you can, what you should, what you shouldn't. We're just talking after the fact, like when you're doing it, how you should do it.
That's it.
How much you should do it, and what way should you do it.
That's it. So first, I want to say over some stories about some great, great rabbis. Some of them related to myself, some of them on their own. The story which is in my book is that when I went away to yeshiva, I was very, very much enamored with basketball, and I was a pretty good basketball player, and even have a story which maybe we'll count later, where I played an NBA player, and I even beat him in a game.
No, we need that now. Right?
We need that now.
We need it now.
You saw okay. So this is a story which is my bragging rights, and I do it with all due humility. But again, as a young yeshiva basketball player, and I played in the yeshiva teams in the mountains, and as a young boy, I played in leagues, Jewish leagues, and I played in the parks in New York against all the best players. And even I was short, but I was then a lot skinnier than I am now, and I was pretty good basketball player. It's pretty, I had a reputation and everything else, and it happened to be that the forebearers of the Washington Bullets were called the Baltimore Bullets. They started out as a team in Baltimore. They used to practice and scrimmage in the Jewish Community Center, the JCC of Baltimore, which is a place where all of us who grew up in Baltimore, we all went there and we played in the basketball courts. And that's where my father played in the handball champion. There was a swimming pool, and the Bullets would come and play. The Bullets were NBA players, so it happened to be one summer the Bullets were playing, were scrimmaging, and a group of my friends and I were there, watching the game and everything else. And there was a player at the time that played for the Bullets. His name was Mike Reardon. Mike Reardon was an Irishman. He played for the New York Knicks. He played for the Baltimore Bullets. At one point, he was considered like the Iron Man, the sixth man. He was like a good guy. He was a solid big player. He
played in the NBA.
He played in the NBA. He played in the NBA. That was it. And it happened to be, there were a few times where I was asked to even, like when they would start scrimmaging and the coach would come out, he didn't have 10 men. He'd say, okay, you go in. I would sometimes run up and down. I would maybe get a basket and not get a basket. So I was used to like being part of the.
This is like their official where they used to practice.
This was they used to practice. They didn't have their own practice facility. They used to practice in the JCC. Anyway, so one day Mike Reardon is playing 1-on-1 against a young rookie, and Mike Reardon was a veteran, and this young rookie was like taking him apart. Yeah, So we're saying, Mike, he's talking about Mike, he's beating you, he's killing you, and this and that. Now, he had a real temper. So at a certain point, and this guy was almost killing him. So all of a sudden he turned around and he said, who said that? So it was me. So I said, I said it. I said, who said that? So just, you come on the court, you play me. I said, sure, no problem. You know what I mean? So I took up the challenge, and he gave me the ball. I guess he didn't know how I played. And I faked the jump shot. I went around him. He went up for the shot. I went around. I got a layup. I'm ahead 1-0. I get the ball back. Now, he's not too happy with this. You know what I mean? Because, again, it's like the same thing's happening. And then I take the ball and now he's afraid maybe I'm going to make a layup around him. So he didn't go for the fake. And I shot the ball and I got the basket in. So now I'm ahead 2-0, right? I got the ball now he's taking me in. Now he was a lot taller than I am, a lot bigger than I am, a
You
lot
have
more.
some
And he was
short
an NBA
Jewish
player,
white
short
kid
Jewish
coming and
white kid
beating
over here,
me.
like
Like,
like what kind of chutzpah? And the guys are all watching, and some of the NBA players are watching. And I used to have I had a pair of basketball glasses because I had glasses and I had them on my face, and and then I had the next shot, and he was taking me very, very well, and I missed a shot. He got the rebound, he came out, and then he did which I would call a dirty play, okay? And he came in and he took his elbow and he smashed it into my face, you know what I mean, to give me a good zets, broke my glasses, and he went in and he got the basket. And by that time already, I was bleeding a little bit, and everyone was watching. And even the coach came over, and he said, "Do you want to continue? You want to continue?" I said, "Yeah, I'm ready to go." But everyone stopped it and this and that. So I ended up beating an NBA player 2-1. This was my fleeting moment of fame, so to speak. And
so if there would be, smartphones, it would be the day of smartphones and internet. I'm sure, like, it would go
it would have gone. It
viral.
would have gone. It would have gone viral. So now it's going viral only
Yeah,
on
now
this
it's going viral
on
now.
this
Yeah.
particular thing. So what do I say? Say for that? That's the bragging rights story. It has nothing to do with. But as a young boy, so as I said, when I went away to yeshiva, I went to learn in yeshiva in New York and Staten Island. So I was told that there was a basketball court, and that entire summer I was in Camp Aguda, many years. I was a good player, and I played, I played against the bigger guys. Now I come to New York, and they had a basketball court in the back garage of the yeshiva, which is like a house, but there was no basketball. Can you imagine? It's not what's called, the Gemara says, loyig l'rush. You know what I mean? It's like you give a person, like you're making fun of him. See, and I was used to playing ball hours and hours a day the summer before. Now I have no basketball, no, even being a star, you couldn't play. And the New York kids, some players, but no one had brought a basketball. The yeshiva didn't supply a basketball, not because necessarily we had a basket, but no one thought about it. It wasn't on Rav Moshe Feinstein and Yvonne Chaim Rav Feinstein's list. You have to have a basketball. A bacher brings a boy, he brings a ball, and I was literally going out of my mind. And to make a long story short, I told my mother, I said, I'm going to go crazy unless I get a basketball. I had a basketball at home. So she said, you know what? We knew that Reb David Kronglis, the mashgiach of yeshiva, his son Ezra was together with me in the yeshiva. He was a little older than I am. And Reb David was coming up to the yeshiva like 2 days later, and we were going to send a suitcase, a duffel bag with a lot of things. And he was coming to visit the yeshiva, and he was coming to speak in the yeshiva. And my mother said she's going to she'll put in the basketball. So then I was waiting. A couple of days later, Rav David showed up, and all the Rabbeim came in. It was a big Kabbalah's Panim. All the Rabbeim were there, and I went to visit. I went out to greet Rav David. Rav David saw me, and he knew that he didn't know there was a basketball inside, but he knew there was a duffel bag. He said, "You sure? Name the duffel bag. Name the duffel bags." I went. I took the duffel bag up. I ran upstairs to my friends, and I pulled out the basketballs. The first thing to get that leather ball into my hands, and my mother had sent cookies, and she sent some clippings from the sports pages because she knew that I was enamored with the sports, and I gave out some cookies to my friends, and I said to the guys, listen, I was 13 years old, I said, come, let's go play ball. I didn't think about there's going to be a Kabbalah's Panim and everything else, and we started running down like little kids running down the stairs. I remember we ran out, and then this was an old house in Staten Island, and there was a big gigantic wooden porch. There's a famous Maisa, which I remember till today. I was running outside, and all of a sudden my friend saw that Reb David was coming up with the Reshiva and the Rabbeim. So they decided, he's holding the ball, we'll leave him holding the ball. They stopped at the door, and I come out the front, and I'm holding the ball in my hand. So what happens when you have all the Rabbeim, Reb David, a Gadol B'Yisrael, and you're holding the ball in your hand? So I decided it wasn't respectful. So I took the ball and put it behind my back, as if I'm going to hide it or something like that. But that was my reaction. And then an episode took place which resonates in my mind until today. All of a sudden, the ball fell out of my hands, and it was a wooden porch. So the ball went on the porch, and it went like this: boing, 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 like the loudest boing, boing, boing you ever heard. I remember I just described in the book that it was like the birds stopped chirping, everything was silent, the ball
like
just
slow motion,
boing, boing. That means my plan of hiding the ball now became the biggest. And what happened was, it was a very funny scene to anyone that saw it. So the Rabbi, everyone started laughing. Everyone started laughing. How did I feel as a child? As a young boy, I felt embarrassed. The only person that didn't laugh was Reb David, the Mashgiach. Immediately, he said, Yeshua, gain them the ball and gave spill ball. He immediately said, he saw what happened. He saw that I was embarrassed, but he was able to control himself because he was a Baal Musa. He said, go quickly get the ball and go play ball. And it was a great lesson for me. It was like, your kid. First of all, it stopped the embarrassment. I learned a lot of lessons from that thing. I learned what embarrassment is, a little bit of a kavana, what embarrassment, to be embarrassed. And then I learned what it is for someone to save you from embarrassment. And then the third thing is, which is that you're a kid, go play ball. And that's a famous expression in America. Play ball. Okay? So when you're a child, or you could say an adult as well, playing ball, if it's used properly, can be an amazing, amazing thing. There were a lot of great Rosh Hashivas, Gedolim in America, who were ball players. Rabbi Scheinberg Zatzal was known as a young boy. They called him Lefty Scheinberg. Lefty Scheinberg. They say he was a great ball player. I didn't see him play. I only saw him learning. But he was known in the youth. He played ball, Lefty Scheinberg. And there's a famous story, which I heard from him, and many, many people have recounted the story, that he said that he became maybe 70 or 80. He said he always used to, because he was a New York Yankee fan. He grew up, New York Yankees, Babe Ruth, the Gedolim, so to speak. But what did he do? He ended up becoming Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg, going to the Mir in Europe, becoming the great Talmud Chacham, the great Masmid. But he said, no matter what, he always said, when it came September, he always said, Avu zayin my Yankees. Where are my Yankees holding in this? Because that's like around the time of the World Series or something like that. And then he said he finally got to the point, he said either he made a kiddush or something like that, that he was able to extract himself from that connection to sports. He said that's how much the Girsa de Yankasa was embedded, what's called in the mother's milk. Sports was such a part of it. Even Rav Shimon Scheinberg, he himself had a point for many, many years. We always didn't stop him from sitting and learning this and that. But he always had that geschmack. Where are the Yankees holding? Finally got to the point where what? He was able to say, I get rid of it. That was really, I was able to get rid of that inclination that's something which really has far-reaching value and far-reaching importance. Doesn't compare to the Torah. I had a Rebbe, Reb Tapik, my 8th grade Rebbe. He was a Kloisenberger Chassid. He was a tall, wonderful, wonderful Rebbe. And when we were kids in the 8th grade, he was coming out to play ball with us, and he could hit the ball a mile. So they say that he had a contract to play for one of the Major League Baseball teams, but he became a Kloisenberger Chassid, and he turned it down. Reb Leib Hyman, great Talmud from Reb Aaron Kotler, also born and bred in Baltimore. Yeshiva in Boston, later on a Rav in Yerushalayim, and a great, great Talmud Chacham. Supposedly, they say he was an unbelievable baseball player, and he was also given a contract by the Red Sox. But Shabbos, they play on Shabbos, and they offered him a lot of money in those days, and he turned it down. So, I heard that one of the great yeshivas in America, Reb Simcha Shustel, Zeichat Tzadik Livracha, great yeshiva from Stanford, I think. Yeah, I heard it was once in the car, and he had gone to like a few chasnas and maybe some shiurim, and he was with his grandchildren. They were driving him, and all of a sudden he put his hands back and he stretched, and he said, seventh inning stretch. Seventh inning stretch. He said seventh inning stretch. So his Einiklach who were like Lakewooders and like they go to Brisk, this and that. They don't know from such things. And he said, Zadie, what seventh inning stretch? And he says, I'm a ratzim. You don't know seventh inning stretch. He said in this. I told this over to a very, very chashuv gadol. I don't want to say who it is because he's a chashuv gadol and I didn't ask for his permission. But this chashuv gadol, I said, I got him to laugh. He said, then he says, remind me, your bishul, remind me, what seventh inning stretch? What's the seventh inning stretch? So it's interesting how these great rabbis, they had a connection to sports, and you see that the message of David said, "Gay spiel ball, go play ball," and these are great stories because it shows that they were part of the society, so to speak, and there was a value and there could be great things that a person can do with it. If a person can make a Kiddush Hashem, a person can make a Kiddush Hashem anywhere. You can make a Kiddush Hashem on the sports field if you act the way you're supposed to. And you can make a Chilul Hashem Chas v'Shalom. I think that's one of the messages that we want to give over, is that these are some of the elements of when we take a look at Torah and sports, like we said at the beginning, the Torah governs the sports. And each person has to know in his time and in his place how much value, how much time he should spend. Sports is a rishus. That means you could use it either for good or you could use it not for good. If it becomes too over-encompassing and you're so much involved in it that it's taking away from your learning, it's taking away from your davening, and then we know that's not really what the Torah wants. But if you use it properly, you play a game, you get healthy, you learn about, as we mentioned last week, about teamwork and coordination and everything else, then these can be great things. Just a few other great stories you hear about, again, how you see how the Gedolim, how they tempered and they looked at things. I have a friend of mine who we grew up together in Baltimore, and he himself was a basketball player par excellence, and he played, and he wasn't a maspin when he was younger, and he went to the local yeshiva. We both went together, and he came from a very, very chashuv mishpacha. His uncle was Reb David Pavarsky, the father of Beryl Pavarsky, and one of the yeshivas of Panovich. And it was decided he's going to come to Eretz Yisrael. He's going to learn in Eretz Yisrael. Now, when he came, he wasn't like me. He brought the basketball with him, with himself. So he had this basketball, and he ends up coming to Eretz Yisrael, and he's supposed to go to yeshiva called Torah in Bayit Vegan. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was yeshiva, because there were a few friends of his that had gone there. But when he came a few days early before the Zman, he came to Bnei Brak in the days when there's no basketball courts in Israel, like in very few, maybe a few people were playing basketball in those days. But he brought a basketball, and at that time, his uncle Reb David lived in the same building with Rav Shach. David lived on top, Shach lived underneath him. So he was by his uncle before he went to learn in yeshiva, and he was going crazy. So he just would bouncing the ball. Rav Shach was downstairs. Rav Shach was trying to prepare to shir klali, and Rav Shach had a chavrus. I heard this from this friend. He had a chavrus, and he said to chavrus, he says, "Vos." He said they're doing shiputzim. They're doing shiputzim. They must be doing what's called. They're
doing some hammer.
They're doing some hammering
on the wall.
Maybe you could ask them upstairs. They could stop hammering. Rav Shach didn't know what it was, but he said the chavrus one said Rav Shach at Gebet. Rav Shach asked maybe you could stop the hammering. He says not hammering. I'm playing the basketball. And then when he went with his uncle to the Bechina in Bayit Vegan, so they came. Reb David Pavarsky was coming, so the Reshiva Reb Shlomo Zalman came. So Reb Shlomo Zalman asked Reb David's nephew. He said, "What did you learn last year?" He says, "Nothing." He said, "What do you mean you learned nothing?" He says, "What'd you do?" He said, "I played basketball." He said, "How much did you play basketball?" He told him 16 hours a day.
Wow.
16 hours a day. He was a masmid in basketball. So Reb Shlomo Zalman laughed, and he said, "We'll take you into the yeshiva." And he took him into yeshiva, and he ended up learning, and he ended up, he played basketball too. He found time to play basketball. He found
not
some
16
Israeli
hours
guys.
a day.
Not 16 hours a day. So I think that, this is really, I think, some great, great messages.
Any shot about why he took him into the yeshiva?
First of all, his uncle was one of the great gedolim, and I guess he saw that he was a masmid, just right. He was a masmid in sports. Now he can be turned that kayach.
Like he has a passion for something.
Put
it, everything he's got into it. You just need to, give him the right passion to care about it.
That's it. I want to end off this particular episode. So I remember a certain balabas. Another story. Certain balabas was a great balabas, and I was zocheh to be at his daughter's chasna, and this person he learned in the Chashvi yeshivas, and he was a balabas, and he loved sports. He loved football. He loves, that's what it was. He loved football. So Sunday, he would he would he'd have a chavrusa, and he would they would learn for a couple of hours, and then he had to watch his football team. He had to watch his football team. The NFL play, the game of the week, whatever it was. He had to watch it, and he had such a strong affinity for his football team, and he was a big cigar smoker. And I remember that the day of his daughter's chasna, he had a chavrusif maybe 2 hours in the morning, and then he said the game was playing early. He's going to watch at least the first half. And he had a cigar. He had a cigar playing, learning, and he had a cigar watching the first half of the game. And then he went to the chuppah. So
did he keep some part of the cigar for the chuppah? Or?
No, I don't know if he kept it for his part of the chuppah. But I guess he missed the second half of the game. That he was Moshe Nefesh. I remember a certain Ner Yaakov Talmud who, at his chasna, which was in Los Angeles, so this was pre-cell phones and everything else, so they had rooms in the hotel that were set up that guys could go watch the football game. I think it was maybe the Super Bowl. I'm not sure if it was the Super Bowl or not. And at the chuppah, he had, at the chasnas tish, he was also a crazy football fan. So he had a portable television in front of him, so you could watch watch what's going on. They're writing the ksuba and everything else, and he's watching the game. At the chuppah, during the chuppah, had people going around. The waiters were going around. Get your fresh hot dogs. They had hot dogs in buns going on. Now, to me, this was like a little bit over the top. We're kind of like you had the influence of the sports like coming in. You have to know when is the right time, when is the right place,
and even if you're on that level, that if your team is going to be playing during a game, you're going to still have to watch it. So make sure not to get married on the day your team is playing.
That's right. Just make it the next day.
Just don't put yourself in the nisayan.
So let's just speak about one last message, which I think is important. And as we've been saying, we say we know Kiyem Chayenu Erech Yameinu Hem Nege Yom V'Layla. In the end of the day, what's really going to remain with us is the Torah and the Kihem Chayenu V'Erech Yameinu. And, we're holding by Chanukah. It's we have to make sure that the Yavanim try to get us lahashkicham Torah Secha, and we always have to have that balance. Is this going to be something which is going to enhance my well-being, and I'll be able to learn better and to daven better and to do mitzvahs better, or is it something that's going to become all-encompassing? And we know that when the Siyam Hashas happened, it's been really phenomenal in the MetLife Stadium and this and that, and they say that the ushers, the policemen, they say they can't get over. They're used to what's going on in a football game.
People getting drunk and fights and
the
screaming
and everything else, and then all of a sudden you have a group of 100,000 people, and they all come for the cause, and the way they speak and the way they thank the policemen, they thank the ushers.
There's a famous picture of Reb Kamenetsky thanking a few of the policemen on his way out in MetLife. Yeah.
Right. And I think that this should be the final answer. Final answer should be is that when the Torah governs the sports, then, like we said last week, Rabbi Yaakov said that there's the Hilchos Galus. This is all part of the Hilchos Galus. Now, what will be when Mashiach will come? Okay, will there be a different way of doing sports? I can't tell you. That's Hilchos of the Mashiach, and I do believe that health is always going to be important, and teamwork is always going to be important, and at the same time, we should always keep in mind that if you're going to play like a yid. I think that's the final message you want to say. Play like a yid should play, and then you play ball, and at the end of the day, the Rebbeinu Shem says, that's also a nachas ruach. Mitzvah Hashem, we should be zeicha to dance and to have all the koiches that we use, that we put into sports. Mitzvah Hashem, we'll put it into being Makabel Mashiach Tzidkeinu Meher Yameinu Amen. Have a great evening. Thank you very much for listening. We want to thank JFoundations.com. If you could sponsor any of our activities, it'd be another way of addressing and being able to give over Torah to other people. Go on the website and show your support. Thank you very much for joining us.